All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode. We're super excited to jump into this episode with Jonathan Gamble and Stephen Floyd.
I was going to say it's a Monday, but it's not Monday.
It's not Monday.
I don't know
That's
what
true.
day
It's
it is.
Thursday. I feel like Thursday.
It's like as far from Monday as possible.
We had
actually.
Monday off, though, so we're all thrown off.
That's true. I got a text yesterday. It was actually a really good news text, and this is not name dropping or whatever, but like I was like, hey, you got a big sync on like a Country Crocker butter commercial.
Let's go.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is great news on a Tuesday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Little did I know it was not Tuesday.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
It would have been if it were on Tuesday.
Yeah, great news regardless.
Yeah. Always wanted a butter sync. That's been the top of my
Of course.
Butter sync's crazy.
That's awesome.
top
Makes
of
me
my
like a
list.
kitchen sink
That's a
with
cool
butter.
band name.
Butter
Butter
sync.
sink.
Yeah.
It could be like a sync project.
Yeah.
Wow,
Interrupted
well, this
you
has
anyway.
been quite the intro, but we're super excited to jump in today with Jonathan and Stephen and really kind of talk a little bit about both of their experiences in the music industry and getting into the music industry and their different roles, and also then talk a little bit about what it looks like to balance creativity and commerciality in the music industry. And so to just kind of jump right in, Stephen and Jonathan, something that is super fun about your guys' stories is you guys actually are longtime friends. So
We are?
yeah, if one of you guys just want to jump into how do you guys know each other? How'd you meet?
You go first.
Sure. We met in Alabama. My family moved down there when I was about 12, and I lived there for about 10 years after that. And Jonathan was one of my first friends. We met playing basketball, and I still don't fully remember this, but he says that I broke his brother's wrist.
I was gonna bring this
boxing him out
Fractured,
one day.
actually. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't remember that, but I guess we started a friendship after that.
No, it was during, because it was at a practice where we were playing in like a church gym where it's not like like hardwood like a normal gym. It's like tile floor.
Yeah.
And so he boxed out
bad
my
idea.
brother. He boxed out my brother, and he like caught himself on his wrist, and it shattered. Like it fractured. Yeah.
Tricky.
And so
And
he
you were
got
like, man,
cast
I've been
from-
wanting to do that for forever. You are so cool.
secretly like, yes,
My new best friend.
So yeah, we bonded over basketball and injuries and whatnot.
Yes, and then from there, bonded over music.
Yeah, that's true. It was like, because we also went to school together, so it was like a youth league at school that we were playing in, and then it was probably like 7th, 8th grade. We were both in choir, like singing and whatnot.
Yeah.
But then I started like leading worship at my local church, and Stephen was involved in his youth group too. And so we kind of started writing music together, and I had Cubase, like the trial version at first, and then we started like producing some stuff and writing, and he would sing background vocals, and I put out some projects through high school that Stephen wrote most of which with me and did BGVs on all of it. And
Yeah, it was super fun. Like every time we hung out, we'd do something musical, and John would engineer everything. I don't play anything. I was just singer and writer. But I love just hanging around, like, yeah, this is cool, making music.
engineering is a very kind verb for that. For the 15-year-old clicking record.
Hey, that's engineering. Nowadays, that is engineering. What was the journey towards? I guess. I mean, did you guys have bands together? Like, what was the journey towards like actually doing music?
Actually, my instinct was to say no, but for a minute we did this thing called Centric. We never put anything out, I don't think. We put it out on like SoundCloud and stuff, which funny enough, through SoundCloud, through a Christian EDM producers community on SoundCloud,
Wow.
can't make it up.
That's very niche.
A sentence no one has ever said.
Yeah, this is the first time you've ever heard of it. That was literally how both of us wound up in the industry.
Totally.
So Stephen wound up. What you tell the story of how you sent the message and all of that
Well,
stuff.
I'm sure. I believe that's something we'll get to later.
Okay,
But
cool.
Just talking about us in bands. You were in a band, and we were both in our like church's youth bands, but never really together until we got to college and decided, okay, like maybe we do something together instead of us doing things together through your name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fun anecdote, a side story. We played on this show called Talk of Alabama, which it was like a morning show, like 25,000 people viewing, whatever, live. And we were doing like Christian EDM, like very pop, like
Nice.
electronic stuff.
Why are you telling
And-
this story?
Because it's hilarious.
story
You
already.
as far as I know, you cannot find this recording anywhere because I asked them to scrub it. But literally, so we're set up for me to like I'm playing keys, and it's all like tracks and my keys rig is all running through my computer. So it's like running out, and then we're playing and singing to that with I think we had click and stuff, but
Yeah.
so we do the sound check, rehearsal, whatever. Everything goes great. We're stoked. we go live, like, red light comes on, cameras on our faces.
And before that, we had planned and talked to the host that you were going to answer all the questions.
Oh, this is true.
And then she comes to me with the questions, and I have no idea what to say. So we started off real bad, and then we get to the music.
And then they're like, all right, we're excited to hear your new song, Weightless. And then we like press play, and there's no audio.
Oh.
So we sing our EDM song a cappella in front of 25,000.
Maggie, you laughing too hard.
And then later found out the track was playing through the TV.
Oh, yes.
So we were singing in God knows what key,
God
knows what
time.
rhythm.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Man, I wish
Wow.
I wish this existed somewhere.
I am so thankful it does not.
Me too. Oh,
We can recreate it for sure.
I don't know. I'm pretty good at.
Oh, I recreated my
I'm pretty
nightmares.
good
I wonder
at
if we can
finding
put
things.
that-
I might find a way.
I wonder if we can just upload the story into Suno and just see
Yeah,
what
right.
it
Yeah.
Have them
It'll
recreate
create it for us.
That's awesome. So the SoundCloud situation, when did that come into play?
I think it was college because we moved into the same house, us two and two other friends of ours, and we were still making music. And I think we just discovered SoundCloud as an outlet to put things out and have to feel like, oh, this is a release, but not quite on DSPs.
Yeah.
And then we found that community there as well. So it was like, oh, this feels like a good home for us.
Yeah, and it was honestly like 10 people.
Yeah.
Like it was not many. It was like 10 folks, and then like a couple would sign these like label deals that were like with like smaller labels, and like we found out later some more about how those things worked, but at the time it was just like, oh my gosh, these people are like not quite famous, but like just shy of it in our heads. We're like,
Yeah.
when somebody signed, it was like, because there's like 10 of us, and so when someone like signs a record deal, you're like, oh my gosh, they made it. Because we didn't, like, in rural Alabama there's no music industry
Not at all.
so like we didn't know anything about, like, when 6 months before my wife and I moved to town, I didn't know what a publishing company was. I didn't know that was a thing that existed. I thought songwriters like worked at labels. Like I thought it was like a job or something. Like you just like apply and then they pay you a salary and like that's what you get to do. Like I didn't have any idea how any of it worked. So like that was all of that. Basically one label wound up reaching out and then kind of had a few like super preliminary conversations that I personally kind of jumped the gun on. I was like, well, if we're going to sign, we're not going to do a 360 deal. And he was like, I'm just kind of like seeing what you guys are about. I'm not like offering you a deal.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But so I remember that conversation. Nothing wound up coming from that, but that kind of put the industry on our radar as like, oh, this is a thing that exists, like not that far from us in Nashville.
At what point did your paths kind of start to diverge? Because you each went in different directions, and maybe spoiler alert here. Today, Jonathan is a successful, amazing songwriter,
That's very kind.
Singer, producer extraordinaire,
Very kind.
and Stephen is an A&R. A mogul at Centricity Music on the Suits side of things.
The Suits side is awesome.
Yeah.
So, at what point did your paths kind of start to diverge?
It kind of started after that conversation with
Yeah,
that
it
label guy, because he was gracious enough to call us. He was living in LA and was like, hey guys, here's some advice. Maybe like start playing 100 shows, get your email list going. This was like 2015. So like social media was just starting. It was like, go where the people are. And I heard all that. I was like, I'm good, bro. I don't care nearly enough to chase it like that. I like singing. I love singing, but like I don't want to be an artist. So like John was saying, it unlocked the fact that there is a music industry out there. So I was like, okay, if I'm not going to be a singer for a living, maybe I could just be around good music. How could I do that? So I transferred from Jacksonville State University, which we were both going to Lee University in Tennessee, because they had just started a music business track. And it was so new that they still required you to either be an instrumentalist or a singer to be even in the School of Music to study it. So I went in, I got in as a singer by the grace of God. It was a terrible tryout. And I was there for 2 years, but it was still a lot of like classical and choral training. Like I was doing a lot of stuff with my voice and had piano and theory classes. And it just felt like I already know I'm not supposed to use my voice for my career. Like this kind of feels misguided or maybe like a waste of time for me specifically. So 2 years into that, I just Googled music industry jobs and I came across A&R, which is artist and repertoire for anyone listening who doesn't know. And very basically what they do is find artists and help make their records. So I was like, that sounds really fun. So from there, I was like, okay, maybe A&R is the thing. I could try and get into that. And I took a shot. I sent a cold LinkedIn message to a guy who was a guest on this podcast many years ago, Jonathan Sell. He was working at Capital Christian in their A&R department at the time. Sent him a LinkedIn message to one of the guys we had met on SoundCloud years before. because he was still making music and it was still dope. And in the message, I was like, hey, here's a guy who could maybe be useful if he's in front of someone who could do something with him. And Jonathan Sell hit me back on LinkedIn 2 weeks later. He's like, yeah, this guy's sick. We're going to fly him out here, have him work with our artists. So from there, that led me to move closer to Middle Tennessee area to chase the industry thing, because Christian music really happens a lot in this space.
Yeah.
Also worth noting, during this whole time when we were at Jacksonville State University living together, we were listening to this podcast.
That's very
because
true.
there's such little information that you can find online, and everything changes so quickly that if you find some article, it's probably 4 or 5 years old and it's probably outdated information. So this podcast was literally like the most reliable source of information we had during that season. So
awesome.
Also worth noting.
That's amazing.
Yes, thank
Very
you.
full circle.
Very full circle.
If you will.
Hey, you made a joke. We
I
had
made a
talked
joke.
about beforehand. Who
Makes me feel old too, because like I get messages now from like Josiah Queen messaged me like, I don't know, it might have been a year ago or something when his stuff was kind of first popping off. He's like, man, I used to listen to the podcast, and I went back in my messages, and he messaged me like 7 years ago or something, and I somehow missed it. And of course, feel like an idiot.
Well, but you can't respond to all of them.
Yeah.
There's grace.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Yeah, we love it. That's awesome. So what about you, Jonathan? What kind of made you start to pursue the songwriter route?
So from that point, so also a little brief background of like how I got into songwriting to begin with. When I was 14, I became like the worship leader in my youth group, and the worship leader's like at the church that I was at. It was a smaller church, like 300 or 400 people, which was kind of big for the area in rural Alabama. But the worship leaders, they were a married couple, and they had spent time in Nashville as not professional songwriters, but writing songs, releasing music, all that stuff. So they were very familiar with the songwriting process. And so basically they made an internship for me at the church that I did all through high school, where I would get to leave at like noon or 1 every day. And so for the last 2 hours of every day, I would come in and they would have a top 40 pop song and a top 40 worship song printed out. And we would mark the stressed and unstressed syllables and melodic parallelism and deviation, and how many times did it say the title? Did it end the verse with the title and the chorus, or was the chorus just one line repeated over and over? What was the structure? And so we started, through doing that every day through all of high school, you start to notice a lot of patterns of like how many chord progressions are in a song, or like there are these things, not rules but tools, that are being used in both pop songs and worship songs. So maybe that's just good music and not just specific to a genre too.
That's really rare. Did this
Yeah.
school have or did this church have some type of a school element, or was it just something that the worship leader was passionate about?
Just the worship leaders, like we wrote songs for our church, and like we were writing for the youth group and for like Sunday morning, we'd lead the songs and like try them out, and then rewrite things that didn't feel like they landed. And so what a lot of churches are doing now, we were doing in like 2011.
Yeah.
It's like it was just built. I always thought I was going to be a worship leader. Like I thought I was just going to be. I didn't know songwriting could be a job yet, so I was just writing with the intention of like, oh, I'm going to lead these songs, and then one day when I'm all grown up and have a full-time job, I'll be a worship leader and I'll be writing songs for the congregation I'm serving. So that's always what I thought it was going to be. And then it wasn't until I was like 22, 23, we, after some of these conversations, that we were like, oh wait, there is a music industry in Nashville and you can be a songwriter. Like you don't have to carry the song. You also don't have to, even in Christian music, you don't have to be, on staff at a church and also do music on the side. You can go just write songs as your job. I didn't even know that until I was like 23.
Yeah. And so you technically spotted talent early and sent it to John Sell. Was that kind of a light bulb for you of like, oh, maybe I'm good at A&R, or what was the path there?
Absolutely. It was just like, wow, maybe I could do this. And that's what inspired me to move closer to town. I started going to MTSU. I was there for a year, and then I dropped out because I was just a terrible student at that time. I was just like, let me just stop wasting money. Let me try and make more connections in town, see where that goes. So I didn't meet John Sell in person, or I sent him the message in 2018. Didn't meet him in person until the next year. And in our first meeting, I asked if he could be my mentor at the end of the meeting, and he was kind enough to say yes. So like all throughout that year, we'd have breakfast. I'd bring him more artists and producers that I found on social media or whatever. He introduced me to more people around town. Super great. And Sell and other people who I had met had always said, like, if you want to do A&R, you just kind of do it. And that advice used to tick me off so bad. Like, what does that mean? But now that I'm here and I have the job, like, I realized what they were saying, and I kind of was doing it. Like, I was just finding talent, giving it to people who had the position to elevate their career, and making my own connections with artists and be like, hey, how can I help you? And that's a lot of the job.
Yeah.
Well, and that's honestly the same advice anybody would give to a new songwriter. Just
totally.
how do you want to be a songwriter? Just do it. Just do songwriting.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah, just do songwriting.
Just do songwriting.
It's true.
Yeah.
And also funny in the handoff of how all of that came about.
That's right.
So Stephen sent our friend from SoundCloud, his name is Asher Postman. So he sent a link to Asher's SoundCloud profile in a cold LinkedIn DM to John Sell. John Sell gets back to him. He's like, hey, this is really good. Asher starts working with Capital loosely through John Sell. And then Asher hits me up probably a month or two later and is like, hey, I'm working on a new project. Do you want to write? We'd done some Google Hangouts right before Zoom was cool. And because he lived in Michigan, we were in Alabama. So he and I do basically a Zoom, right? And then at the end of it, he's like, hey, you're really good at this. This was really awesome. And he had mentioned he was doing some more legit, no one listening to the podcast can see my air quotes, but he's doing some more legit sessions recently. And so I remember we hung up that right. I knew he really enjoyed it and thought I was at least good enough to do it again. And so I remember I had typed up a text message being like, hey, you said you're doing some more legit sessions. Could you introduce me to anybody who could help me do some more legit sessions too? And I remember holding backspace on that text where it started skipping back, deleting the message because I was like, I don't want to be that guy who's asking for stuff.
Yeah.
And I just felt a nudge and be like, you just go ahead and send it. And if I had not sent that text, I would not have moved to Nashville because he wound up introducing me to John Sell. And then in my first meeting with John, I was like, hey, my friend is the one who sent you Asher's profile. So you need to hang out with Stephen.
Yeah.
So that's how Stephen wound up meeting with John and then asking him to be his mentor. And then everything kind of scaffolded from there.
That's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like you each kind of made the intro for each other.
Yes.
Totally.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So
Wholesome.
it's from
Total wholesome
very
bromance.
wholesome, very full circle.
Yeah.
Yes. Now we're just going to count how many times it comes up. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love that. So, Stephen, going back to your journey a little bit, could you bridge the gap then of how you ended up working where you now are, which is Centricity Music, and describe a little bit of, now that you're there, to what your day-to-day looks like? Because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of questions about what actually does that look like once you're in that role at that kind of level.
Yeah, it's a great question. It kind of just came the way I had been doing when I moved to town and decided I'm just going to make more connections. So through John Sell, him connecting me to other people, usually when I'd have a meeting with a new person, I'd ask them hey, who should I meet with? And if they would be kind enough to connect me. Eventually, that led me to John Mays, who helped start Centricity and still is running the A&R team over there. We had coffee at Sonic during 2020 because we couldn't go in the office because of restrictions. And I remember our meeting also being just sharing stories of how we got to where we are, but he was kind enough to buy and send me a book at the end of ours, which was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I had never heard of or read. And when I got it, I just couldn't put it down. But it took me 6 months to read it because it's a lifestyle self-help book. It's been around for years, and it just took me that long to try and apply all the stuff it was talking about. So when I finished the book, I hit up Mays again. I was like, hey, let's grab coffee, talk about the book. We did that, and in that meeting, he asked, hey, we need an intern for the summer. You want to help us out? So I started that in 2021. I was there for 2 months. I was delivering pizza at night and doing the internship at day, and they were kind enough to decide to hire me full on from there. So the first year, I was doing basically all the stuff I was doing as an intern, and then they just kept adding things to my plate. About a year in, we signed an artist named Natalie Lane, and Mays comes to me and is like, hey, I think you're ready to start doing creative A&R stuff. So I'm still doing a mix of some admin things, like archiving all of Centricity's music. I'm the one who asks the collaborators, hey, can we get all the files for that? And then a lot of creative A&R stuff. So going out of the office, grabbing coffee with creatives or other industry people to create or maintain relationships, scouting for new talent, signing them, helping create their records. So being the production oversight, talking with producers about budgets and timelines and whatnot, helping the artists pick their best songs. So maybe they'll write, 60 songs for a 6-song EP, helping them curate and be like, okay, which is the best of the best? Which ones should we pick to be on this project? And still being the talent and relationship manager. A&R is kind of the point person between the artist and the rest of the label. So doing my best to carefully play both sides, considering the creative needs as well as the business needs. I wouldn't say there's a day-to-day. It's more of a week-to-week. So going out, grabbing coffees. There's some inter-office meetings just with the A&R team, with the publishing team, with the marketing teams, playing everyone's songs so we're all on the same page. Going out to see shows every now and again, whether locally or elsewhere. That's always fun. Going out to support the artists who have tours just to show face and be like, hey, great to see you playing these songs out. Yeah, I'd say that's mostly it.
I'd love to just double click on the A&R side for a second.
Yeah.
And I know the role even since I've been in the industry, which has really just been since like 2009, so call it 15, 16 years, the role of a label and of an A&R in the process has changed so much, even since I started it, and of course since John May started it. Used to be where, you know, you'd go find talent, you'd sign them, I believe in them, we're gonna just put our money and put our resources behind them because we believe in them. And nowadays I've heard the analogy of the label doesn't really start the fire anymore. The artist has to start the fire. The label can just pour gas on the fire.
Sure.
And maybe it's only been, I guess, since you've gotten into it, it's just kind of the way it is. But the way that I think a lot of Nashville A&R seems to operate, and maybe you can confirm or deny this, is it's more like scouting online, finding things that pop off, finding anomalies on TikTok, and then it's almost like a race to like who can sign them the fastest. Mm-hmm. And it's less based off of like, yeah, there's obviously you got to like the person. They can't be total just awful people.
Yeah.
But if something seems to be resonating audience-wise, then it's a good business move to, you know, gravitate towards that type of an artist. Does that play a role, or am I totally just perceiving it incorrectly?
I think you're spot on. It's definitely more advantageous for the label to see an artist who's already doing something great and want to pour gas on that fire. I have heard from creatives just that like labels aren't doing artist development anymore. And granted, I work there, but I think Centricity has always been very good at that. Probably the biggest and best example would be Lauren Daigle. The more recent example would be Katie Nicole. We seem to find artists that we do believe in and stick with them for the long haul, probably longer than most other labels would, in the sense that, hey, we believe in you and we're going to keep trying. And to look at it from maybe a major label aspect, I think Warner Records has done a great job with like Teddy Swims and Benson Boone. They're just like, they've been signed for a long time and they just started popping off. That's a great example of artist development. They just kept putting out stuff and believing in it and the people, and it's paying off. Mm-hmm. So I think there was definitely a large influx, probably because of 2020 and the restrictions we had, of majors and other labels being like, okay, TikTok people are popping off. This is where music is right now. We have to sign all these people, no matter if they're good or not. I think we're going more away from that and back to artist development.
That's good. And Centricity, to emphasize what you said, because I was signed there for so long as a writer and an artist before that, I definitely saw that behind the curtain that, yes, artist development very much was a part of the DNA and is a part of the DNA. I mean, even to the point of, you know, a lot of people listening maybe aren't even aware, but, you know, Centricity's indie artist retreats.
Which is happening next week.
Yeah, so you're still doing them.
Yeah.
And that's something that I had never heard of. I still really haven't heard of another label that does that, where, you know, on your guys' dime, you're flying these indie artists out to Washington or wherever you do the retreats, and you know, feed them for several days, have them write, have people come in and speak to them, and ultimately it's a great way for you guys to build relationships and figure out, okay, is this the type of person we'd want to do something with, and that is unique to what y'all do and have done.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Yeah.
For sure.
I would also, from the songwriting point of view, just to toss in my 2 cents on that conversation, I feel like I've seen labels in the last, 5 years, 2025 now, and then 2020 with COVID and all that. I think during the COVID season, a bunch of labels, both, Nashville countryside and Nashville Christian side, maybe made the mistake, and honestly LA side too, maybe made the mistake of signing artists that went viral once, and now are choosing the better choice of signing artists who go viral twice. Because it's not really, and I don't mean that literally, but more of like your Josiah Queens and Forests, and where it's like, okay, not only is the music compelling enough, but also they can continually engage an audience. Because like at the end of the day, that's what, like, it is as much about content now as it is about music, which we all have varying degrees of feeling about, but it is. Like, the content is how you get the music out there, and there's no label who's going to make the content for you. It has to be the artist who's in the video. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like I just hear all my other friends talking about finding people who are self-sustaining, which is like having the fire, and then they can pour gas on it with marketing budget and whatever. But finding someone who's good at being like, ooh, that's a good place to shoot content. That's almost as important as having a great song to shoot content with.
Yeah.
And I recognize that's not fair.
No,
It
totally.
used to be much different and arguably simpler to get signed because the gatekeepers were the labels and the radio stations. Now you can put out whatever you want, whenever you want. Just if you have an internet connection, spacebar, and record something, you can put it out. Yeah.
Which I think is worse for those on the inside and better for those on the outside, because there's no one stopping you from going viral tomorrow,
Yeah.
and then the next day, and then getting signed. Or getting an offer and being like, I don't need you anymore. I've already figured it out.
So one of the things we wanted to talk about kind of in both of your guys' roles, Jonathan with songwriting, and which you can talk a little bit more about too, about, you know, what genres you are in now and what that looks like. And Stephen, of course, with you in A&R, is a little bit of the balance of creativity and commerciality in the music industry. Because I think there can be this kind of idea that they're at war with each other.
Yes.
And would love to hear from your guys' various perspectives. If you guys think that is the case, if it's sometimes the case, if it's just whatever your guys' thoughts really are on that.
I have this conversation probably 3 times a week because this is because my approach, because of like what I talked about probably 20 minutes ago with my like song math background of studying songs and counting syllables in the verses and like structural common threads and all of that stuff, I kind of have a reputation like the song math guy. So it can, which from the wrong perspective, I'm sure some people could be like, oh, it's formulaic, you know, or whatever. They could think that I'm just coming in with some formula of how you make a song and we just live by that or whatever. But I think so. People always ask me this question. They're like, oh, so you have the commercial side down, at least it appears like externally, which I absolutely do not. But so what do you think on this commercial versus creative thing? And I think especially artists and new artists in particular have this like you don't become an artist without something to say.
Yeah.
So like if you take the risk, and we all have to be a little bit naive to think that we can make it, you know. So if you take all of that and you say like, I'm going to make the jump and I'm going to be an artist and I have something to say, then you have to have some level of identity for what you create just to begin with. And then the labels obviously need something to market. So like it can really quickly devolve in the head of someone new, and I understand because I was new not that long ago, of like, oh, I can either make what I want to make or I can feed the beast and make what they're asking me to make. Whereas in my experience, nothing, because I've done both of those things, in my experience, nothing I've ever made to feed the beast has worked. And like because I think the audience is actually deeper and smarter than we think. And like there's still a bucket of songs that work in markets, in every market, pop, country, Christian, whatever, that are songs that I don't understand. Like I call it the polka bucket. Here's my analogy. I'm going somewhere, I promise.
Is that a place in the South, like an eatery or something?
You would think
That
so.
does
bucket?
sound like it.
I'm kind of hungry.
It's next to
Yeah.
Cracker Barrel.
Exactly.
And the Rusty Bucket.
Newly
SpongeBob?
rebranded.
Yeah, but Polka Bucket kept their branding.
They did not change the logo.
It's still bad.
Yeah. So I call it that because like you could play 10 polka songs for me and 3 of them could be smashes and I couldn't tell you which 3 because I just don't understand that genre. It's not something that I'm familiar enough with where I can tell the difference. And so in every genre, pop, country, Christian, whatever, it's not a Christian music specific thing, there's a certain kind of song, like whether it be the, you know, solo cup up drinking song in country or whether it be the like super dark, scary, trancy song and pop music or whatever in Christian. There are certain things where I'm like, I can't tell if it's great or not. I'm just going to be a bad judge of that. And so I think what I tell people and artists and writers who are getting into it, trying to balance this commercialism versus creativity thing, I think that noise comes from hearing these songs that they don't like work. And so I think when you add those into the mix, it adds a lot of confusion. So what was a big game changer for me is scraping those out of what I consider for myself writing and go, okay, of the things that are top 10 if I'm trying to write a Christian radio song, I'm trying to get good at writing Christian radio songs for that audience. There is a commercial piece of it where I'm looking at the top 10 of what's working at radio because that's what people are responding to. I'm not trying to copy those songs because I'll be 2 years late anyway if I just write one of those songs. But I am studying what the audience is drawn to in those in that format. But I'm only picking the songs I would have been proud of if I had written. So maybe it's 4 or 5 songs out of that 10, and the other 5, I'm like, gosh, I don't know why people like that. Which we all feel about different genres.
Yeah.
So whatever 5 I wouldn't be super proud of if I wrote, I don't consider those. And I go, okay, what are the common threads and the ones that I would have been stoked if I wrote? Where I'm like, dang, that's so well written. They did such a good job pressing on this thing that I'm trying to do.
And if you can't find 1 or 2, you're probably not in the right genre.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, write something else.
Yeah.
So, because, it's better to serve a genre than try and change it. But
Yeah.
so I think that was a big, like, I really push back on the idea that gets sold to new creatives that it's one or the other and they're at odds. I think the real things that move the needle live in the middle of the Venn diagram. Like, it has to be both creatively fulfilling for you because you have to sing it every night on tour, and also not tell the audience what they should like, but serve them what they do like. The metaphor I always use, and then I'll stop talking and let Stephen talk, is no matter how good your steak is, you can't serve it at McDonald's. So if someone's in the drive-thru ordering a McDouble, and no matter how good your steak is, if you serve your steak, they're going to be upset because they ordered a McDouble. And so you have to know your audience. So like radio, so to talk about radio specifically, a lot of times people will give radio, they're like, oh, it just plays the singles are the least deep songs on the project. I like the deep cuts that are, the artist's story and like these things. And I personally think all those things can live on radio. But if you get up in the morning and you're on your way to work and you maybe had a rough morning with the kids and it's just stressful or whatever, a lot of times you don't need a steak of a song in that moment. You need something quick. You need like a cup of coffee that's just like everything's going to be
makes
okay.
you feel good.
Yeah. And it's like, remind yourself everything's going to be okay. And not this like deep theological crazy thing that maybe is what I want on Sunday morning, but maybe not on Monday morning. So I think a lot of times we push our own, as songwriters, we want to be known as 3 Michelin star songwriters, whereas not everybody's ordering a 3 Michelin star song every time.
Most of the time, people ordering Doritos.
Yeah, exactly. That's
the
what
thing.
the average thing is.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of get out of our ego a little bit. And there are days that we get to write 3 Michelin star songs.
Yeah.
But there are also days that we are serving an audience too. And when you kind of take a service perspective instead of a, hey, everybody get on board with what I'm making.
Yeah.
It usually works out better. I think.
And I want to hear Steven's perspective from the label side. But I'll speak just to piggyback off of you on the songwriter side. There's days that I would just call it business writing. Like, I think we all, let me back up. I think there's a big difference between a songwriter and a commercial songwriter. They're two different endeavors. You can say I want to write songs, or you can say I want to write commercial songs.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things. One has no rules on it, and one it can be whatever you want it to be. The other one has rules. And there are some days and some writes that I do because there's an angle to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And there's a business thing to it. Those are business rights, but you have to have something that creatively fills your cup. And for me, that's where a lot of for me, that's like sync days. Like, because musically I can just kind of play and forget everything I did the day before, and it can kind of be whatever. The lyric doesn't have to really mean anything. And so I think it's important for anybody who's listening to this, like, give yourself those two different buckets of like, this is a business day and this is a like purely for me. Funny thing that happens sometimes is those days purely for me end up becoming the commercially successful ones.
Yeah.
Not always. Definitely not always. It's not always that great songs win. I don't believe that really anymore. They win sometimes.
Yeah.
Totally.
But and the last thing I'll say on this, and I want to hear from you, Stephen, is I just got back from seeing Oasis in New Jersey a couple nights ago. Did not expect this, but it's the best show I've ever been to in my entire life.
Wow.
Like beat the Coldplay show for me, which was very high on the list.
Yeah.
Dang.
And I don't know what it is. You can't really put your finger on it. There's obviously the anticipation of these guys have gone away for 16 years and they've reunited and come back together, and it's this pent up demand. Of course, that's there in the stadium. The energy, 80,000 people never hurts. But it's interesting. You talk about the generation thing. There's kids there singing Wonderwall, and like my 8-year-old just told me that like Wonderwall is her favorite song ever. So I'm like, wow, yeah, that's awesome.
You did a great job.
You did well. But even then, you analyze these song lyrics, and you're like, this doesn't mean, it means nothing and everything at the same time.
Yes.
and there's no math to their stuff whatsoever. I guess you could argue there's probably is.
I think there is.
There probably is, but it's just like they at least give off the perception of we just don't care. This is just stuff that we think sounds good, feels good, and
Yeah, it's, I think, structured so well that you don't notice the structure.
yeah, and that's probably more true. And that's the genius of Noel Gallagher, is like he really is more the methodical, for sure. But it was just a reminder to me of like, man, like getting back to think, because I write a lot in the country space now, as you do as well, and there's so much lyrical overthinking that has to be done because there's everybody's looking for this clever angle, but clever is cool the first time you hear it.
Yes.
And then it's not that cool anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of like, I think a lot of country writers, and I'm hearing that with artists too, that they want stuff that doesn't feel like it's written. Like they want stuff that feels like it's just real. And that's not true of everybody. Some people, of course, Ashley Cook loves every song to have some clever flip in it. And but there will probably be a day she gets tired of that too. And they just want something that feels real. And that's where I came away from the Oasis show being like, man, this song means 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people out there.
Yeah.
And the lyrics don't even necessarily make sense just read down on paper, but the melodies carry it. And it was honestly like a kind of a spiritual experience in a weird, if I can say that without being like, blasphemous or whatever.
God made music.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine.
Like in some ways I felt like I was more able to like connect and like quote unquote worship, if that's not a blasphemous way to say, of like in that environment of these guys who have no clue how God's kind of channeling through them, but he is.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's my sidebar on the commercial versus the art thing.
Yeah.
I do want to hear.
I won't say much because John said a lot of great stuff. So I'm going to say just go back and re-listen to everything he just said.
That's very kind.
From the label's perspective, I will add a few things. I'm also in the service business, service to the genre and the artist. So I'm doing my best to help my artists create their best work in this current moment and see if they can overlap their uniqueness with the familiarity of the genre as it stands right now. And there is a little bit of fortune telling too, because like John said, like these songs won't come out for a year and a half, 2 years. And if they hit radio, maybe that timing or later. So we don't know what's coming. We just try and help the artists create their best art. And in my job and in publishing A&R's job, like we'll put them with other collaborators, usually a top liner like Jonathan and a producer, to help them create that best work. And sometimes they go over the line of like, that's too commercial or that's too outside of my bounds. Like, I don't like that. That feels like selling out. And we step back from that line. But I think we are looking for artists who are willing to at least take on that challenge. Like, if you can try to go to that line, if you want to make something commercial already, that's great. We don't want to force you to make something commercial. If you have that desire in your heart and we feel like we can match the vision, we want to help you do that.
It's well said.
Yeah. I think too, something by chiming in a little bit is that I think there can be a misconception, particularly with newer artists and songwriters, of like there's that balance. I liked, Jonathan, that you were just talking about different audiences. I think it's totally okay for someone to say like, maybe it's not the K-Love commercial audience. That doesn't mean that there's not another audience that is a wide audience that you can pursue that just isn't going to fit that box. Like one, there's a conversation to be had there. But I think sometimes too, newer songwriters and artists can feel maybe like, sometimes maybe it's a tug and pull, truly creativity, like creatively, and again, like wondering where to compromise, if to compromise, again, valid questions. But I think sometimes too, right at the beginning, sometimes it just needs to be honed, like the craft itself, like the structure is just not there. And the purpose of the structure though is to help it, again, resonate with people. So sometimes it's not trying to strip the creativity from a song or a process, but really is more so about equipping maybe the process so that the really cool creative thing you're trying to say is going to resonate better. So yeah.
Yes. If I could indulge myself to talk about one of my songs that worked that I think on paper a lot of people would have said wouldn't work, because there are songs, K-Love is positive, encouraging, and I have a song called Desperate that did well in K-Love, and I remember writing that song, like there's nothing really positive, encouraging about it. Like it doesn't say, oh God, I'm desperate and you did it, thank you, by the end of the song. It doesn't do that. It's a prayer being like, God, I need you to do something. End of story. It doesn't resolve. So I think if you were to look at it formulaically, overly mathematically, you would go, oh, like, no, that's too being creative. You don't get to do that with you're not being commercial enough. And I think that's overthinking that piece of it. But the chorus is structured alternating double syllable and single syllable rhymes every single time. So, oh God, I'm desperate. down on my knees, send help from heaven, Lord, come through for me. Redeem this wreckage, restore my peace. I'm not asking, I'm begging. Lord, come through for me. So like it is so structured, and that is what makes it commercial. And also it, taps in emotionally to something people are interested in and have to say. But we also got to say something that was left of center and probably edgy for the genre because it was so structured. So I don't think it's this like either you get to write a song called Desperate and no one listens to it, but it's your favorite song, or you sell out and write a super structured song that's positive and encouraging. I think the songs that move the genre forward and people get excited about are something that do both, because I remember on the way to that session I already had the melody for that chorus and some of the lyrics, and I was rewriting some pieces of it, and then we changed some in the room, but I had the lyric, I'm not asking, I'm begging, and I started to write other versions of that line because I was like, I don't know if Caleb will play a song talking about begging God for something. I don't know. That might be too guttural. But I was like, you know what? I'll at least bring that to the room. And if we all like it, let's at least turn it in with that lyric. And if everybody at radio and label, if they all are like, hey, that's too much, we just can't say that, then we'll change it. And so instead of filtering myself on the front end, I make someone else be the filter, and I'll edit later if I have to. Yeah. But so that's why I'm passionate about it's not this like sometimes it's this and sometimes it's this. It's, in my experience, it's the songs that can do both, where it can, for somebody it feels like, man, this is so different from everything else, whereas you're secretly packaging it in a way that is really commercial, but you're not forcing it to feel commercial, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That feels like an awesome place to kind of land the plane for us today. I would love to end, though, by asking if you were to give advice to anybody out there listening who's trying to navigate kind of straddling this fence of creativity, commerciality, what's one final word you would give them?
I would say be yourself. If yourself wants to take on the very difficult but rarely fulfilling creative task of writing commercially or being an artist who makes music commercially, go for it. Put your all into it, but continue to be yourself. Like, make music that you love and you're not ashamed of, and you feel like you could sing 20 years later if it comes out and it's a hit. I think that's it.
And for the songwriters, whether artists or otherwise, I would say it's not either study songs or trust your gut and your soul, but it's study songs. Seriously, pull up songs that you wish you wrote, and you'll find more patterns and common threads between them than you think. And find what the rhyme scheme is. Count the syllables. Where do they put the title? Is it in the bridge, or is it at the end of the chorus every time? Is it bookended? What's the structure? Study songs, and also trust your gut. Don't leave your heart behind for your head. Like, you have to have both, because on one end of it, you write soulless songs that get 100 in class and no one listens to. And on the other end of that, you write songs that die in your Google Drive and you love them and no one hears them and no one listens to them over and over again. So you have to do both. So study songs and trust your gut.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Made It in Music podcast. And be sure to check out our other episodes where we unpack hundreds of hot topics with some of the top music industry pros, both here in Nashville and all over the world. Subscribe to make sure that you automatically get future episodes, and leave us a review if you loved it. It would really help us out. Or send an email to support@fullcirclemusic.com if you have ideas for how we can improve the show. If you would like to become a Songchasers member and attend our training sessions live, head over to joinsongchasers.com to learn more. You also get additional exclusive training from music industry professionals. You get our royalty-free custom tracks from Seth Mosley. You get song reviews from me and my team, and you get access to a custom social media network we created exclusively for songwriters and musicians. There's nothing else like it on the internet. Head to joinsongchasers.com to learn how to join, and check out madeitinmusic.com for more content and episodes from this podcast. See you in the next episode.